I'm gonna view and we'll go right into my slideshow. All right. Well, let me just do a quick introduction for people who do not know me, who have never heard from me. My name is Kedma Ough. Kedma means to move forward. I want to thank my parents for not designing something to go backwards. So we want to move forward. I have been a champion in the industry, supporting inventors and small businesses as a whole for close to 20 years. Of course, most of my colleagues think I found the fountain of youth. I'm not going to deny that I'm much older than I look, but I really care about what we're doing. I want to thank the Michigan team for bringing this together. And I am excited to share a little bit about crowdfunding. Before I get into it, I want you to step back if you're listening right now, because this is an interactive experience. I want to know, where are you stuck? Are you at the idea stage? Are thinking about crowdfunding? Have you started formulating some thoughts around that? Do you feel like maybe you have something complex that may be difficult to raise funds through crowdfunding? Or maybe you're at the back end where you tried this once or twice and failed. So wherever you're at, you're in the right place, because we're going to talk about all that. Now, crowdfunding is a subset, of course, of all funding, right? It is a subset that we're going to focus on, but I want to be clear that the idea behind everything I do is, how do we target what we want? And so we're going to talk about how do we actually target crowdfunding as well, so we get what we need. So really the idea is about variables. I want to lead you first into a story, and then we'll go into an experience. About 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to connect with a woman inventor who was really interested in crowdfunding. She had met me after she had done Kickstarter, and she failed Kickstarter. She had set it up. She had her invention. Her invention was something that was a little bit unusual for Kickstarter. It was a product that was pretty much designed around supporting females, and it wasn't something that would normally be picked up, but it was essentially a disaster. What we did is we actually reversed the idea around it, and instead of hitting up Kickstarter first, I actually connected her with a women's accelerator program. Now, why would I do that? Because I knew that if I could get her into the women's accelerator program, she could drum up, which we're going to talk about, she could drum up enough backing, enough fans, enough interest, so that when she hit Kickstarter the second time, she had a really strong opportunity to win. And the lottery hit. So the second time around, she went in, she raised $70,000. Now, because she raised $70,000, I was then able to get her hooked up with our state's economic development innovation program, because she had shown that she was able to raise funds, and then she received another $70,000. So I want to make sure that we're clear that when I teach you about crowdfunding, there may be elements that you have to stop, pay attention, do effectively, or else you're going to fail. Okay. And so when I think about money, I think of it as a chessboard, and I want to know who the players are, and I want to know what's your next move, so we don't get to a stalemate or a checkmate. So let's begin. First thing I want you to understand is that with crowdfunding, we all know it's a method for specifically getting small contributions from numerous individuals. So I always give the analogy of a pizza pie, because I like slices. So with crowdfunding, it is slices, right? It's numerous individuals who are coming together to provide you as a stranger, assuming they don't know you, with some sort of capital. Now, what we have to step back and realize is there's different types of funding platforms. Everybody who I've worked with over 10,000 entrepreneurs, but the majority of people I meet, the first thing they say is, oh, can you help me get on Kickstarter? Oh, can you help me get on Indiegogo? That's two platforms, and it may be the right one, it may not. So let's talk about different platforms. First platform, donation-based. Donation-based is when people and donors are actually donating gifts of money, gifts of resources, but they're not expecting anything in return. They're actually not expecting even maybe your product, but they're giving it to you because they believe in the mission. It is generally used for a charitable reason or for a project. Don't rule this out. Now, a lot of times entrepreneurs and inventors don't go to donation-based because donation-based is considered charity. However, don't rule that out because you may have an invention that's tied to a mission that people want to go behind. Now I'm going to tell you something really small story that kind of shows you the power of that. My son, when he was much younger, came to me and said, Mom, I want to find a way to raise money for my product. And I also want to find a way to raise money towards helping people with autism. Now, we could have gone the rewards-based platform, which we'll talk about, but we actually went through GoFundMe and did the donation-based. And I used his video as a platform to talk about why this product was so important and why organizations or individuals should donate or consider donating because it's going to help people with autism. We raised the amount he wanted in 24 hours. Okay, so be strategic. If you have a product that can directly support a social mission, be strategic to determine whether or not it makes sense to be part of a donation-based program. Second, debt-based platform. This is clear, cut and dry. Basically, the fundraiser pays back the money plus the interest to the lenders. So it is usually comprised of financial institutions, investment groups, or individual investors. It is regulated. So here's what I've done for you. I don't like to just talk the talk. I walk the walk. So I'm giving each of you a homework assignment because I was a professor for many universities. And I am literally giving you places for you to research on your own. I am not going to tell you where to go because that's not my role. But I want you to research different platforms that focus on different focus areas for crowdfunding so you can help decide what's best for you. Third kind of platform we want to look at. Oh, I want to pause on this. Debt-based platform is usually repaying back plus interest. However, I want to call out Kiva. Some of you know Kiva. Some of you don't know Kiva. Some of you have used Kiva. I've used Kiva for a very long time. I love Kiva. Kiva was designed back many, many years ago with the idea of helping inventors in third world countries actually get an opportunity to get funding when they didn't have access to lenders. It became so successful, and their opportunity to get back their money was so successful. In other words, they had a very, very low percentage collection rate that they started Kiva here in the US. And actually, I just met with the Kiva regional representative in my area. I'm based in Oregon, because now they're doing Kiva hubs. They're focused on regional hubs to really help people step up. And with Kiva, it is a loan. It is set up as crowdfunding, but it is interest free. So I want to make sure we are clear here. It is interest free. So if you get a crowdfunding loan through Kiva for $10,000, yes, you have to repay it back, but you don't pay interest on it. So it's an incredible example of a debt-based platform, but it levels the playing field for inventors who may not know about it. All right, let me continue. And if there's any questions coming up, please holler at me. Is that okay? All right. I try to make this as exciting as possible. You know, we're going to get to the fun part. Equity-based. Equity-based is essentially you giving up your equity. However, that can be a bit of a challenge, right? Because if you start an idea and you don't have sales, you're pre-revenue, you don't have a lot of people who have said yes, how the heck are you going to base the equity behind that, right? 0 divided by 0 is still 0, unless you have a different way of doing that. However, I don't want to rule this out, because there are some people listening right now that have sales and have distribution, and maybe they do want to have equity. Be mindful though, right? Because we always want to make sure that that equity financing is clearly identified in terms of how does that transfer? Is it transfer into a convertible note? And then what kind of impact do they have in terms of the percentage of equity and their influence in the company? So again, I went ahead and I gave you some platforms to check out. You can kind of research on your own, because what's most important for me is to teach and for you to decide and then come back and say, hey, I've reviewed these platforms. What do you think? Okay. Now we have one last platform and then we'll talk about next step. This is the one everybody goes to because Kickstarter and Indiegogo did a really good job. This is rewards-based platform. This is where you give the product, the gift certificate, the discounts. And I can tell you, for every single successful Kickstarter or Indiegogo program, there are thousands that failed. Thousands that failed. And what I want you to be mindful of is, it doesn't mean you're going to fail, but I want to give you the solutions, give you the answers ahead of time so you're prepared how to be successful. So the three that I just threw in, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Fundable, one of the things I always pay attention to is when I go into the platform, I am first going to the success rates. So I'm going to look at which of those products actually did well, and I'm going to study them. I'm going to put that on a worksheet. I'm going to look at why did they do well. We'll talk about some of the secret sauce, but I do a lot of back-end investigation first before I ever decide to put a product in the platform and test. All right. One of the things you have to realize, go back, is each crowdfunding platform actually is targeted. Believe it or not, there are crowdfunding platforms that target every kind of demographic, every kind of geographic, every kind of industry. We're going to go through some examples now. So I like this little circle because people ask me, is crowdfunding a targeted funding resource? Absolutely. This is just a very small scale to show you we can pull funding in crowdfunding that's based on students or artists, minorities or women or veterans or R&D. So when you make your choice, be mindful of how you're fitting into that. So how does that play in the real world? So some of you are very diversity based. So I'm going to go through actual examples. Now, this is research we did over the last year. Given COVID, there may be one or two that are either transferred or bought out, but for the most part, these are all still adequate. This is the one slide that excites me the most, because now you see how the real game is. You probably, I mean, David, honestly, did you realize that there were funding platforms just for cannabis? Probably.
No idea. And I thought it was literally the two, Indiegogo,
a Kickstarter, right?
Kickstarter.
Right.
And that was it.
Right. And so here's what I want everyone to pay attention to. Getting money has to be strategic. And if you don't know where your gang is hanging out and you're hanging out in the wrong place, don't come to me and get frustrated. That's not my problem. You're hanging out in the wrong place. Also, I want you to be sensitive to the fact that, why do you want to go somewhere where there's a lot of noise? When there is traffic, when it's crowded, when it's bumper to bumper, you may get there, but it may take a longer time. Maybe go somewhere where there's less noise and less traffic, because you're going to get a better opportunity. So if you're listening right now and you're like, yeah, I'm in energy and environment, I'm doing clean tech, or I'm doing fashion, or I'm looking at food, please do yourself this favor. I am like giving you thousands and thousands of dollars of secrets. Do your homework, research this, and then come to a better conclusion. You can do exactly what you said, David. You can look at Kickstarter versus Indiegogo versus some of these diversity platforms and get a better sense. Now, there's also niche-based platforms, because if that wasn't enough, here's some examples. If you identify as an African-American or an entrepreneur that is maybe in the LGBT community, or maybe a veteran, or maybe you identify as a woman, guess what? You have your own platforms. So, you know, it just cracks me up that people think just Kickstarter and Indiegogo because they have such good brand. When the Black Lives Movement came about, I scored it. I said, that day that I started seeing things happen, I said, David, you know what? I'm going to see millions and millions of dollars come down the pipeline for this movement. And yeah, within probably 10 days, there was close to $500 million dollars set aside for entrepreneurs who identify in that community. So now think about that, and then think about crowdfunding when you're trying to identify where to go. I spend a lot of time here because if you don't have the right home, you're going to screw up everything else. Does that make sense?
Very much so. And I had Jean message in, they have a kitchen utensil. Is there any funding space for kitchen gadgets around the home?
Great question. So a couple of things we want to look at. We want to look at what stage they're in, because they may fall into the R&D platform. There are R&D platforms that are still at that beginning stage pre-revenue. We certainly want to hit up houseware, or like maybe it's actually in the food or something to deal with kitchen and food. That's why I gave you guys so many different variables, so you can actually do that. However, I don't know where this person is based, what state, but don't rule out your state may have an actual crowdfunding platform. Here's an example: Texas, Washington, Oregon, Illinois. How many of you watching this right now actually knew that your own state has their own crowdfunding platform? Probably not too many, right? So,
and I'm guessing every single state has one.
Of course. But you see, we have been fooled to this like situation that we think we have to go to one place to get what we want, and then we get frustrated. I am not taking away Kickstarter, Indiegogo. I'm just going to blow your mind up and expand it and ask you to think strategically where you are. So if you're in the kitchen utensils, but you're based in Washington, maybe your best bet is to hit Washington's crowdfunding platform. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Did you get another question?
Walter was asking if there's any specific to toys.
You know, thank you, Walter. I did not research all the industries. I wish I did, but I would bet that toys is big enough that there probably is something like that.
Yep.
So if you want to figure that out, 2 places I would suggest, Walter, you check out. Number 1, hit up the Toy Association, the National Toy Association, or whatever oversees that, the organization as a whole, because they have a lot of information. And then go on to Google, but you have to be very specific, because Google otherwise is going to frustrate you. Be very specific in your keywords. So I want you to key in toy-focused crowdfunding platform and see what comes up. Now, here's another really, really cool thing. All right, Walter, I'm about to give you a secret sauce. Hear me out. If there is no crowdfunding platform for the toy industry, and we all know that the toy industry is a tremendous industry for, millions of dollars being supported. What do you think you could do? David, what do you think he could do possibly if it's not available? Any thoughts? What do you think I would suggest he do?
Get on the phone, start talking to people.
Get on the phone. No, but even better, he could create a community to help start the platform. Okay.
That'd be amazing.
Exactly. Now you're thinking differently, right? So you would pull people in. Obviously, Stephen Key knows the toy industry in an amazing way. You just pull people in and you say, hey, I want to be a part of this. I did this research. I want to start that. All of a sudden, now you're in the front of the game. You're at the front of the conversation. So sometimes when you don't see a solution, don't give up. Don't be frustrated. Bring the solution to the market. This is how I built my organizations. If I didn't see an inventor group, I created one. And then all of a sudden I had a seat at the table. Does that make sense?
Yep. And we also have a specialist that's coming in tomorrow, Mary Cousin, on the toy industry. And
then we're going to ask Mary. Mary, are you going to set this up with us?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Let's talk about what you need to do. This is the most important part of this presentation, because now I set the stage. I set the stage of where you have to figure out where your home is. And now you got to focus on these 14 steps. Please do not cheat. If you cheat, you're going to probably fail, and then you're going to get mad at me. But I'm not going to be holding myself liable, because I'm going to ask you, did you follow the 14 steps? These are steps that I came up with after looking at, hundreds and hundreds of crowdfunding success stories. Number one, what the heck are you solving? If you don't know what you're solving, please get off the platform and talk to other people who can help you. Now, I don't have the invention here. It's downstairs, but I just recently bought the world's cutest, it's about this big, David, cutest air conditioner. It's about this big. It is so small. I bought 6 of them. I didn't know if they would work, but you know what? I like cute and I like air and I like air conditioning, right? Oh my God, my husband loves it. He keeps it right by his computer and every day he's like, oh my God, this is the best gift you've ever bought me. I thought, what? He's like, oh, I love this gift. I get to put water. I get the ambience of the light. I'm like, okay, well, it worked for him, right? Because I always have these gadgets I bring in. However, they defined a problem because in Oregon, we have air conditioning in 1 or 2 rooms, but we don't have the whole house air conditioned because it doesn't get that hot. But usually 1 or 2 weeks out of the year, it gets hot enough that it annoys me. But now I have these mini air conditioning. And so it solved a problem for me for small spaces. So first, make sure you're solving the problem. Second, you better perfect your pitch. You know, David, how long it takes for someone to capture someone's attention or lose their attention. Do you know how long that time space is? Any idea?
I mean, I've heard that it's very quick. It's like 10, 20 seconds or something.
9 seconds.
Okay. So you got to be good. You got to be tight.
You got to be tight. Like, I don't know. I may have lost half of you, right? Who knows? But if I didn't lose half of you, I got you in that 9 seconds. I got you in my story. I got you in my connections. I got you somewhere, right? If you don't perfect your pitch, get yourself to Toastmasters. Get yourself to the National Speaker Association or hire someone who can pitch for you. Because if you only have 9 seconds, David, you got to be on. And here's what I've known about inventors. They're brilliant, but they talk like they're PhD professors after we've just spent 7 hours learning. Do you understand what I mean? They get into the technical weeds and have to explain everything. Oh, I'm like, oh God, please, what is it? Do you want me to buy something? Because I'll buy it right now if you stop talking. You see what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not trying to insult them, but get that professionalism. You've got to perfect your pitch. Number 3, build your audience in advance. You have to do this. Now, I do a lot on LinkedIn. So for people who don't know me, please get to LinkedIn. You'll find me. There's only one Kedma in the world. But I built my audience on my own. It took me about 1.5 years, and I have about 34,000 people that follow me. Do you have any thoughts that if I put something out that maybe a few are going to be following me a little bit about what I'm doing? Yes, because I have the audience. And I'm not special. I'm not different. I'm just a little, well, I do wear a superhero cape, but besides that, I just know what I know. So David, I would tell people, build your audience early on before you ever go into crowdfunding. 4, have fans that love it. If I'm going to have a new invention, so I'm going to show you one here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like this little orange thing. It's called Fix and Zip. This is a product I worked with years ago. I love it because if you have anything that's broken, any zipper that's broken, like your dress or your jacket or a tent, literally you can buy these. These come in multiple sizes, and literally you can use this. It has a explanation directions in the back, and it replaces your broken zipper in less than a minute. Now, that I was a fan. And if you want people to really buy into crowdfunding, use them in your pitch, use them in your videos, because I can bring other people there to say, oh my God, I use this product. It was incredible. So make sure if there's possible with your product, have fans that love it. They can help elevate the crowdfunding campaign. 5, you better create a compelling video. David, how many videos have you seen that scare the bejesus out of you? You don't even understand why they did the video. Have you seen any video that was just like atrocious?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's all the time.
All the time. And you know what I hear from inventors? They say, Well, I couldn't afford it, which I appreciate because I come from the funding world. I couldn't afford it. You know, I wanted to go out quickly. I wanted to make it a quick thing. Look, if it is garbage, you're going to get garbage. And you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can go on Fiverr. You can reach out to your inventor community. You can do a barter. You can go to Upwork. Whatever you do, do not create a piece of garbage video and then wonder why nobody wants to figure it out. More importantly, if you have an invention that's complex, make sure in the video you have instructions. Remember, sometimes your product is not easy intuitively to figure out. Make sure you incorporate that into your video. Number 6, you better nail those incentives. What the heck am I getting? Especially rewards-based platform, what am I getting? When I made the decision to buy that air conditioning, the reason I bought 6 is because I got a deal for 6, right? Everybody knows this. I didn't want 6, but I have, I have 6 rooms in my house, right? Between my basement and my attic. So I was like, well, it's cheaper, it's better, I like it, it's small. It was compelling enough for me to spend my money. Make sure you work with someone or research other incentives that were successful. Number 7, you gotta set a reasonable goal. Now here's where many, many inventors fail. They set a goal so high that some of the platforms, if they don't meet the goal, what happens, David? What happens if they set a goal of $200,000 and they get $150,000 instead? What do you think happens to that money?
Nothing.
Boom, nothing. However, if they were smart and they set a lower goal of $25,000 and they reached it, what could they do? Increase the goal, right? So be very, very careful in how you set your goals, because it hurts my heart when people do all this work and they can't get to the finish line because their goal was too high. Okay? How are the questions? Any questions so far?
I have had a couple questions come in.
Let's do it. Let's pause.
Sandra started out with just a comment. I love your energy, Kedma.
Thank you.
And then, do you have any cannabis funding websites? I saw there was a couple.
Yes. So let me talk about cannabis. Now, I come from the SBA. What you need to know is SBA is always up and up. Federal regulations. I spent 15 years on and off at the Small Business Administration. So we all know this. This is no secret. According to the federal law, funding from a federal level is not available right now for cannabis. However, cannabis is an incredible industry. And so what we're starting to see is organically, we're starting to see solutions happening in several states and with certain platforms so that they can solve the problem. You know what I love about innovation, David? That in spite of regulations, inventors will figure out a way. Do you know what I mean? So in spite of the fact that FDA or the federal institution says, no, we're not going to do it, people figure it out. So number 1, absolutely you want to look at crowdfunding. But number 2, I'm actually working on the back end. So I will, if you're interested, just jot your name or let David know. But I am working behind the scenes, and it's probably going to be, I would say 30 to 60 days, but we are going to be onboarding funders specifically targeting cannabis because it is a huge industry, and I'm not tied to the government anymore. Not that I don't love the government, but it does restrict me in terms of serving people in the industry. So yes, cannabis funding is coming, and it's coming big, but we have to be very sensitive to making sure that that funding is only being provided for states that have been approved for cannabis use, right? So Oregon is one of them. There are several states that are, there are some states that are not. So, so for anyone listening, if your state has been approved, just reach out or find a way to connect, and I will definitely put you on the waiting list for that because it's something I'm really excited about sharing. Was there another question?
Sorry, I muted myself.
No worries.
Ivan asks, what is the average amount of royalties or return an investor is looking for investment?
Question. So I am an accredited investor, and so I think it really depends on a couple of things. If you're thinking about an investor, I want you to understand Investors hang out with other investors. That's the bottom line, because they're trying to mitigate risk. Now, if you're doing an angel investor where it's a one-off, like maybe David and I have known each other for 20 years, and I know his integrity, I know his character, I've seen his sales before, I may step in with my own capital and say, hey, I want to invest in you, not necessarily just for the industry, because I know that you can scale things up. But traditionally, know that investors hang out with other investors. So for example, target investors. One of my favorite ones is called Pipeline Angels. If you are currently listening to this and you're a woman who's thinking about getting investments, or you identify in the LGBTQ community, that is their wheelhouse. It is a national organization of very successful women that only fund women businesses, okay? That's where I'm putting my money. That's where I'm putting, not that I don't want to serve male Caucasian men or anything like that. I'm married to one, but it's just my decision is my decision where I want to put my money. So first you have to make sure where you're getting your investors, because that's very targeted. Now the percentage is all going to be based on a multiple of things. What's the valuation of your business? How much have you scaled? Who else is involved? Am I taking a position, where I'm going to be a controlling interest? So, I've seen it as low as 1% and I've seen it as high as 51%. So it all depends on the situation. I think a range that you can feel comfortable with could be, maybe 1 to 5%, but that's all relative, right? I don't want to skew one way or another. I just want to be sensitive to, it depends, I have a case right now where the investor is taking 30%. But that's because it's a startup business and the investor is bringing in a lot of connections and a lot of systems. 30% was reasonable for what was being negotiated. So too many variables for me to give you a direct answer, but that was a great question.
Mm-hmm. And then Charmaine said, "This is so wonderful."
Well, thank you so much, because you know what? I love educating people and I love talking about money. So let me talk about the rest of them. Do we have any more questions or can we continue?
Not right now.
Perfect. Promote before you launch. Now, there's all these questions on where do you promote and how do you promote? If you are on LinkedIn, promote on LinkedIn. If you're someone who loves TikTok, promote on TikTok. Now, I'm not on TikTok yet. I'm working on it, but I have to tell you, my 12-year-old 2 weeks ago just had 100,000 views on his TikTok. And I'm like, all right, Fallon, you're gonna have to show me how this works. So can I hire you as a TikTok coach? Because I got to figure this out. So the cool thing is that you've got these amazing, brilliant kids who are coming out and they are genius. Hire them. Hire someone who's a student. You don't have to do this on your own, but make sure when you're promoting, you have a strategy. If you plan on crowdfunding in November, guys, you're already too late to the game. I want you actually doing a 90-day commitment, a minimum, okay? Set up your schedule, figure out what you're going to do, and it's all about education. It's all about getting people prepared for the program.
Can I jump in with a quick question that's on point here?
Please.
Any tips on how to build an audience?
Oh my goodness.
That's a whole week-long seminar.
I will talk a little bit about how to build an audience because it's really important. I came out 3 years ago as a small business superhero. Basically, I went out to Portland, I hired a photographer and I said, I'm going to come out as a small business superhero. And my colleagues laughed at me, David. They laughed at me because they didn't understand why I would do that. They didn't understand how that could work. However, I have a very compelling story. If you ever hear me on stage, my story replicates what a superhero goes through. I went through a horrific family environment. I escaped. I went into hiding for 5 years. And as a result of the work I do, I basically set up I'm not religious, but I set up a contract, myself and God, at age 18, a very long time ago. And based on that contract, I serve now for the rest of my life serving people. My life is a heroic world. So it ties into the brand. I'm not saying this to put any light on me. I'm saying this, David, to anyone listening. Who are you? How do you want to show up in the world? What is your voice? What is your brand? There are some exceptional books out there, how to create a compelling story, how to create a personal brand. So you really have to first realize that to build an audience, you have to be likable. Now, Simon Cowell isn't really likable, but I happen to love him, right? Because he's honest. Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank, he's my favorite. Every time I tell people, they're like, how could you like him? People, he always says he's dead to you. I'm like, I like him. You know why? Because he's straight and to the point. You know who's dead and who's alive with him. Those are all characters, right, David? Those are all characters. What you should not be doing is being invisible to the world. If you become invisible in the world, you will not build an audience. So the first thing I would tell that person, A, get some books and read. B, interview influencers, people you love, people you trust, people you admire. Just get on and say, hey, I'd love to interview you. I'd love to know how you built your audience. 3, hire experts. I have a LinkedIn coach. I have a TikTok coach, because I am not afraid of asking for help if they've already gone there. And it's really affordable. You just have to take action. Okay? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Does your TikTok coach have a driver's license?
No, and it doesn't need to be, right? Right. You see what when I think about the ability to pull people in, I don't care if they have a degree. I care, can they get me where I want to go? Unfortunately, we're in a society where sometimes we're judged by our degree. Now, I have a master's in business, but that's not what makes me successful. What makes me successful is, everyday work. So, if my son can get 100,000 views, heck yeah, I'm going to pay him.
That's awesome.
Right? So, yeah. And his name is Fallon Ough. I don't know what his TikTok thing is, but if you're interested. Okay. Let's talk about hiring a copywriter. Guys, don't be afraid about hiring a copywriter. English is my second language, David. Believe it or not, I learned English at the age of 8. I write for Entrepreneur, and I have someone who has to edit all my articles. I have the genius of what I talk about, but I don't know all the grammars as well as someone who's really proficient, who learned, English here from age, 4 and up. So I'm not afraid to hire a copywriter. Hire someone, because the language of what you say can play a huge role in whether or not someone is going to actually purchase from you. It's the resonation. It's the feeling like they can connect. It's how that product's going to feel. So it's not just the visual, it's actually the actual content. So think about hiring a copywriter if you don't have one. Number 10, please, please, please do your homework on pricing and profitability. I cannot tell you how many times people on crowdfunding platforms literally lost their shirts because they don't know what a cost of goods sold is. They didn't realize how many expenses. They didn't take into account the cost of transportation, or what if their manufacturer didn't deliver and they had to deliver. There have been too many horror stories. Make sure you do a proper budget so that you can really be prepared for worst case scenarios, and then set the pricing accordingly. Any more questions? Because I have a few more, and then we'll open it up. Oh, you're on pause.
Oh, sorry. This is a good, I guess I'll save this for the closing question.
Okay, save for the closing? Okay.
Good closer.
Good. All right. Ensure your manufacturing is in place. You know how many times people run to crowdfunding and then forget to have their systems in place? Too many. Make sure you have your suppliers in place. When COVID hit, there was a lot of breakdown in supply chain management. You don't want to guess whether your suppliers are going to be ready to deliver. You want to make sure they have that. And make sure you have something in a contract. There is legal representation you made available through these communities. Reach out, get something in place. Because what if your manufacturer screws up? Who pays for that loss? Who pays for maybe bad press? Who pays for customers that are bad and give a bad review? Who's responsible for that? Is it you, or is it the manufacturer? And if you don't have that written down, you don't have that agreed, you don't have that figured out, then it is on you. So make sure whoever you're working with, there is an established understanding what they have to deliver, and if they can't deliver, what are the consequences? Certainly we want to be very cordial, but business is business. And the more you can do it right up front, the better you're going to be when you launch. Number 12, please, 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 please establish your IP. Now, there has been a lot of conversation at the legal end, at the US Patent Office, at the UIA. And it's really scary that there are trolls out there, David, that literally search for successful crowdfunding campaigns. And what do? Before the crowdfunding campaign completes, David, what do? What do the trolls do?
They find the IP that can fight it.
Right. And a lot of times they're going to copy it. You find someone in another country, you don't have a filed IP, guess what? By the time your crowdfunding campaign is over, they have the product out to market. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that you can't enforce your IP, but if they have their product out to market in another country and you don't have an IP there, good luck, right? So you got to be really sensitive. Now, one quick conversation on that. I worked with an inventor who had a situation like that happen, and another company actually started delivering pretty much the exact product, but he had his IP in the US. He didn't have it in the other country. He made a brilliant move, David. You know what he did? He called them up and he said, I do have the IP. I know you have infringed. However, you're able to actually produce it cheaper than I did. Would you be willing to give me a percentage of your sales? And they agreed. So he literally took money from the people who stole the idea because they could deliver faster products. And it was like a licensing deal. I was like,
That's
okay,
awesome.
I don't recommend it for everyone, but genius, right, David? Genius.
Yep.
He just reversed the licensing deal. And he's like, yeah, Kedma, I don't have to do the work. They're doing it for me in a cheaper way. And they just pay me a paycheck. Love that.
That's so cool.
All right. Use an influencer. Guys, there are a lot of influencers in this community. Obviously, I mean, I can call them out, but you know who they are. If it's someone that is behind your product, uses your product, hire them to be your influencer. If you don't have one, you can go onto Cameo. David, you know what Cameo is? It's a great website. What is it?
Well, there's actually a question in the box. What are your thoughts about Cameo?
Okay, then I'll tell you. I like Cameo, okay? I mean, look, I like superstars, right? I like the idea that if I'm going to do a product campaign, that Kevin O'Leary is going to give me his input. Now, it's not going to hold as much water, but it kind of looks really cool on my videos when he is the one speaking about my product. When he's seeing the product and he's like, hey, that's cool. I wish that was showed up at Shark Tank. So I'm not opposed to Cameo. I've seen Cameos be successful for events. You know, as long as it's done purposely, as long as it aligns to your mission, you can use very large represented, identified influencers like Cameo, but you don't have to even go there. Just go to your community. You're going to know who the influencers are. They're the ones who are on the boards. They're the ones who are promoting associations. They're the ones that are constantly advocating. Maybe reach out to them and say, look, is it a conflict of interest, David? I'd love for you to review my product if you like it. Would you be open to being an influencer and maybe doing a video to showcase this product? As long as it's not a conflict, what's the harm? So it's just something for you to consider because it's always great when you have an influencer behind you. When my book launched, Target Funding, I had already been fairly influential in LinkedIn. However, I was following this amazing woman, Bridget, who at the time had 1 million followers, David. Okay, I only had 30,000. She had 1 million. I sent her a personal video of what this book meant and how many people it was going to help. And she not only came on and did a video, she endorsed it on the back of my book. Now she has 3 million people who follow her on LinkedIn. You see what I mean? Yep. So she's like, you know, Kedma, you don't have to pay me. You're doing good work, and I want people to know about it. So it's as simple as that. You may not even have to pay the influencer if they buy into who you are. Last, I'm not going to kill it because it's a dead horse right now. I don't like to say dead horse because I'm vegetarian, but choose the right platform. That's the last one. Okay. I know we have a few minutes left, and I think there may be an opportunity for me to go to another room for further questions if it comes up, but let's open it up for questions.
So I'll have two questions on this, and then we'll jump you over to the Q&A room.
Yeah.
Barb asks, is there any one or two resource recommendations that help people with these 14 steps?
Now, you know I can't answer that.
I know.
It's a great question. Here's what I would say. I would say yes. It's usually going to be a consultant in the field, right? It's going to be someone who's done it. So yes, I mean, this is stuff I've helped people with. I just don't want to refer. I'm really sensitive to making sure people do their homework and identify. What I would suggest to anybody doing this, identify 3 people or 3 organizations that could help you through this, and then make a determination of what's best. But I've given you the roadmap. And so a lot of this you can take and run with.
And then the next question is, how do we buy your book?
That's a great question. Yes. So a couple of ways. You can just go right onto Amazon. I know that Joe and their team had some books available, but just Amazon, targetfunding.com. It's also on audio. And yes, I am the actual voice. So you will hear my voice. Yes, you will hear my voice on there. So that's another way to do it. And obviously I love people on LinkedIn. So if you felt any value on this, please, please, please let me know. The other thing I want to share, because I wanted to just give a quick bonus, if you don't mind, because your audience has been so awesome. So let me just kind of give you this, and I can make it available. Let me just make sure it's bigger. So I don't know if you can see this, but I'll make it available. I came up with 8 different top crowdfunding questions you can use to address if you want to interview people or if you want to just determine it. So, and also I want to also tell you, David, I put together an Inventors masterclass, but only for funding, because that's all I work on. There's many of people who do patents and licensing and all that. More power to them. I only do it for funding. And if you follow this link, and I'll send it to you, I give a special rate for inventors who are in this program. Yeah, so it's a one-time fee. It's not ongoing. Basically, it's, I think 10 modules I put together. And then the rate today is $99. So it's,
wow.
It's less than what I charge for my consulting time, because I really, to me, education's everything. So let me just walk through the 8 key factors, and then we can wrap up with any last questions. Number 1, does the platform support a successful track record for business? This is specific to your industry. For the people who said, well, I'm in the kitchenware. If you don't see any kitchenware doing great, please move on. If you see art doing great, great, do some research. Does the platform offer the crowdfunding model best suited for you? This is what we talked about. Is it debt-based? Is it equity-based? Is it donor-based? Does it support your industry? This is where you're going to go to those specific niches, right? Is it offer cannabis or fashion or restaurant? Or does it offer certain criteria for diversity? If you've identified as a veteran or someone with a disability or someone, who falls within a certain minority group. Does it offer specific geographic area? We talked about this. You also want to look at what are contributions collected from backers and distributed to the crowdfunding campaign creator and manager. So really important to see what the back end is happening, because it might be nice and sexy up front, but it's the back end we have to pay attention to. And are the fees transparent? Sometimes I've seen people get on crowdfunding and they cannot believe the percentage that they have to pay to onboard once it gets paid out. Make sure you add that all into your cost of goods, or else you may lose a lot of money. And is the platform active and successful? Now, if it's too active, you may actually not get an opportunity to raise funds the way you want. So you want to make sure that there's a balance. So those are my 8. Happy to share it. And then this is how you can find me. All right, David, what else is left? A few minutes.
So I was going to send everybody the link to jump into the Q&A room so that they can jump in there with you and ask you one-on-one questions. So that just went into the chat, and on the chat and on the Q&A board. Natalie said, "God bless the speaker today. For $10, I got priceless information. Thank you, thank you." Barb said,
Lovely.
"Thank you."
Lovely.
And
Lovely.
Sharon said, "This was great. Thank you so much for your generosity. I already linked with you on LinkedIn."
Perfect. Perfect.
So yeah,
All right.
and that's part of this business for everybody. When you're on a webinar like this, go link with her on
Please. Yeah.
it grows your own network. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it works exponentially, because then you start to friend more people in the business, and it's a phenomenal thing. And it
It
happens.
is. Not only that, David, but also to speak about that the people that you've hand selected are legitimate people who are caring in the community. And in a wave of confusion where you don't know who to trust, you really want to have some people on your side. You're like, okay, I can trust it. I may never work with you, but I can certainly answer a question.
Mm-hmm.
So now, do I go now to the break room? Is that my next step?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go
So
right now.
can you see the
Yeah.
link in the chat?
And then the only thing I would ask is if anyone got any feedback, any nuggets, to please let your team know, because I'm always about improving as a speaker. So happy to just learn and maybe get some feedback on how things went. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go hop on right now to the other Zoom.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Kedma.
Okay. Bye-bye.